Great. I'd like to call the City of Monona Plan Commission meeting to order Monday, January 13th, 2020. Roll call.
Chair Moore.
Here.
Alder Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Homburg. Here. Ms. Fallett.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Holmquist. Here.
Terrific. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from December 9th, 2019?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any additions, corrections, changes to the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes carry. There are no appearances this evening. There is no unfinished business this evening, so we're going to move right to new business. 6A, public hearing on a request by the Monona Grove School District, represented by Epstein Ewan Architects, for approval of a zoning permit for exterior HVAC renovations at 800 Greenway Road, case number 2-001-2020. Would you like to go up to the podium and introduce yourself? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Okay. Be happy to listen to anything you would like to present to us as it relates to what's before us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is McLean Schramm with Epstein Ewan Architects. I'm one of the architects working on the Winnick Law project. So what we're doing at Winnick Law is a heavy renovation to the building. We're renovating several interior spaces to improve the functionality of those spaces and improve some of the goals that the district has set. And more than just interior renovated spaces, we're also going to be improving the shell of the building by replacing all the existing window systems to a high performance glazing system. And we are improving the building on a security level by adding a secure entrance sequence for visitors. This is going to require all visitors to be funneled and funneled into the office and buzzed at a couple of checkpoints before they are given permission to enter the building. So that's going to create a much more safer environment for the staff and students. And last but not least, a big part of this renovation is a new mechanical system for the building. So all the spaces are going to be heated and cooled by a new system. And this system, as you'll see with some of the slides that we pulled up or in your packet, on a rooftop or a roof plan, you'll see that there are several units involved with this new system. That's for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is if we were to provide just a couple of rooftop units, those units would be very, very large. So by creating several rooftop units, we were able to reduce the size of those units to a much, much smaller size, and also screen each unit with with an aesthetic metal panel system so that you're not actually seeing the mechanical unit itself. Another reason why multiple units was the best solution was on the inside of the building as well. So we're dealing with an existing building that has tight conditions, low or minimal ceiling structure spaces. So with multiple units on the roof, we're able to reduce the size of the ductwork that supplies the air for all the spaces. Larger mechanical units would require much larger ductworks and would be much more difficult to offer the same comfort with larger units. So going back to the units on the roof, we are screening. We're proposing screening all the units. Again, that screening is on 4 sides with a metal panel system. In the handout, we've offered a brochure of our basis of design, which is cityscapes. That is, we're proposing the horizontal louver system. In a green, I actually did bring a sample of the color with me if you would like to see, but the existing building has a green fascia on it, so that green for this metal panel system will complement the green that's already on the building. There is a section provided in your handout that shows a single unit and the height of the screening around it. You'll see that there's 2 feet of space between the roof and the bottom of the screening, and this is to provide the proper air circulation for the performance of these units, accounting for snow drifts or snow loading to make sure that they're not, they still have the movement, the air movement to perform. Each unit is about the same size. They may differ within a few inches, but the average height of these screenings are 5 foot 6 inches tall. So that may be a couple inches less or a couple inches more, depending on the actual unit, but that's about the height that you'll see. Lastly, you'll see in your handout that we provided a couple of perspectives. The perspectives were of the existing building as it is without the screens, without the units on the roof. And then in the same view, we provided what it would look like with these screens on the roof. So you will be able to see them from the street. There are several trees around the building that kind of hide them a little bit, but you will see the screens, and with the aesthetic, the decorative metal panel with the green to match the existing building, I think you'll be pleased with the final result.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak specifically before we close the public hearing? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing then. Then we'll move on to consideration of action on the request. You can stay right there. Consideration of action on the request by the Monona Grove School District represented by Epstein Ewan Architects for approval of a zoning permit for exterior HVAC renovations at 1800 Greenway Road, case number 2-001-2020. Doug?
Thanks. So I think just a couple things to add. The city staff have met with the applicant to discuss the project, and the decision was made that both the vestibule and the window work was really in keeping with the current footprint of the building, and it didn't really require any additional review. So that was effectively considered administratively, but the HVAC, because of the extension on the roof line and the impact of that, the visual impact, that was decided that that piece would come forward to the Plan Commission. I think in terms of the proposal, there are 15 units, but I think they're well screened. When we met with the applicant, the podium was explained just as it was just now, and so I really think the impact is minimized as much as possible. I would also point the Commission to the section of the ordinance that requires all HVAC and mechanicals to be screened. I wrote that in the staff report, and so I think it's suitably screened. Really, there are no viable alternatives to a pretty aged, and obsolete system at this point. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Now we'll open it up for questions from the Commission. Rob, would you like to start?
I guess my first question you kind of touched on, are there any alternatives, options feasibly other than this? You mentioned having a very, very large system would be the only other option, is that correct?
I wouldn't say it was the only other option. We did work with the district on a few options to meet all their goals, and they were very conscious of the aesthetics that it would have, as well as the functionality. They want to make sure that this is a very comfortable environment for the staff and students, and again, dealing with existing conditions and their budget. After reviewing several options with us, the architects, our mechanical engineer in the district, this was the solution that the district felt best to meet all their goals.
Are there any noise implications with this many units on the roof? And if you could speak to that.
Noise is not a concern. The screening that we're providing will also provide not just an aesthetic appeal, but a a barrier acoustically as well. So units make noise, but it's not, I couldn't tell you a decibel off the top of my head, but it was never a concern of it being a noise issue, and the screening is only going to reduce what noise they would put out.
And then the kind of the interior space, open space in the building where there's a big unit, is that the existing HVAC system?
It's part of the existing, yes.
Would that be removed as
Yes,
part
that
of
will
this
be
project?
removed.
Great. That's all I have right now.
No questions?
No,
Kathy?
this seems to be a necessary and needed improvement to a situation, and this seems to be the best possible option, so I'm fine with it.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of options, especially just given the conditions that you kind of pointed out. I think some of what Rob may have been getting at is a similar thing that just jumps out aesthetically when you're looking at the age of the building, the architecture of the building. You know, you're looking at a flat roof, and it's a kind of a 1950s modern kind of look. Especially, you still got the same lighting structure from the same era, and when you add HVAC equipment close to the edge and it makes it visible, kind of disrupts that. But when I look at the amount of real estate on the roof and where you would have to place these, my guess is that was one of the things that came up for the district of, if we place those further back, we have additional runs that you have to make, which increase cost and flexibility and might impede some of the interior space revisions. So I get the balance of it. I appreciate the smaller scale of each individual, which may help balance that out. So I think it's the best you could do with what you're given at the time.
Thank you.
Corinne?
No, I agree. Rob asked some of the questions that I had too, so especially if it's going to be a little bit more efficient, which is what it sounded like, having more units and making that a little bit more efficient within the building. I think that's great.
I have a couple of questions. One is, knowing, as the superintendent and I just talked about briefly, that the school certainly has an interest in the longer term in potentially placing solar on the roof. Is there any flexibility as it relates to the actual placement of the individual units that would therefore make solar easier to should it come to pass? Recognizing the runs and all that, is there any flexibility there?
There is flexibility on where those roof units can be placed.
Mhm.
They were placed with the idea that they're the most efficient location where the ducts need to be ran inside of the building. One thing I didn't mention also is structurally how we're supporting each of the units. By providing multiple units, we were able to keep the weight down to not have to provide extra roof support for these units. Solar panels, you can kind of put those where you want to. They can go around or in other locations. But to answer your question, was there flexibility? Yes, but that could mean a less efficient way of running the duct system inside the building.
Okay. And then my second question relates to the screening, which is, you've given us the height, but in looking at the catalog picture, if you will, of the screening that's been selected, it looks like the distance away from the actual unit in comparison to where the screening is placed makes the unit size actually almost at least double what the unit size is. So can you give us a sense of, in doing that screening, how much bigger each one of those units becomes? Because it looks like it, like I said, at least doubles in size, if not more, as a result of the screening.
Yeah, so the screening does have some clearance requirements based on the mechanical unit. again, airflow is part of that. Also, maintaining those units to have certain distances between the unit and the screen as someone's working on the inside. That's all based off of the unit itself. So the specifications of the unit are going to determine how much clearance they're going to need on the inside.
Right.
Off the top of my head, I would say you're going to have 3 to 4 feet between the unit and the screen on most of the sides. Some of them may be less just because there isn't something that needs to be maintained on that side. So double in size may be accurate, you know, that it may be close to double in size when you talk about the footprint of the unit versus the footprint of the screen itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see, I have one question. There are no rooftop units in the school today, is that correct? Is there any equipment up on the roof?
There is, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many,
Okay.
but not nearly as much as what we're proposing.
Is this going to trigger additional fall protection requirements? Obviously, these units will need to be maintained and serviced.
Correct.
I suspect that the screening provides some fall protection, but just traversing between units, will that trigger any additional fall protection? Handrail specifically, which could...
Sure. I don't believe so. Obviously, yes, the screen provides an inherent fall protection just in itself. As someone's working on the unit, they're in the screen area, and then walking between each unit. The units are placed purposely not near an edge of the roof. One, maintenance, and two, the further in, the less visible that unit is. So we were very conscious on keeping both of those things in mind when we place the units on the roof.
I would recommend reviewing OSHA requirements. I work for a large corporation, and we've put a number of rooftop units on our buildings and have had to completely enclose the perimeter of the rooftop in handrail, permanent handrail, which would obviously impact the aesthetics here if you'd be required to do the same thing.
Thank
Okay.
you. Any other questions?
Would that have been covered through this DSPS?
Not
approval?
necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. It's up to you guys, but.
Any other? Do I have a motion?
I will move approval, including staff recommendations and compliance with OSHA requirements.
Second.
Do I have a second? Was that a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good catch. That's why you're here. Smart man.
We now want to move on to reports of staff and commission members. Staff report regarding status of development projects.
Thanks. I wanted to provide an update following the December meeting, particularly on the lighting that was discussed. I did manage to reach out to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, specifically it was the bollards closest to the school that was the issue. So I've reached out to them and working with their maintenance team now to see if there's not a solution in some way that they can be dimmed even slightly so they still have function, but certainly limit the impact. I would say it's fair that driving by there was some distraction at night, you know, with just how the angle of the lighting and the proximity to the street. So working with them and hope to have a solution on that. And also working on the light ordinance materials, continuing to work with that, so hoping to get that back to you pretty soon as well for more discussion.
Thank you very much. Upcoming meetings.
So in addition, since the this agenda was published, we will have an item coming forward for the 27th, the riverfront, the final phase. of their PIP would be coming forward for a pre-hearing for the apartment building. So preliminary discussion at this point, but the timing works well. There's a CDA meeting the following day on the 28th, so I think they're eager to begin to get feedback from the commission and to hear some thoughts. So I'll be sharing those materials with you as soon as possible, and look to have that on that agenda.
Thank you. Do we have any requests for information? Commission members, yes.
One question, did they state how big of a building they're looking at? I know at the ribbon cutting, I talked to Steve a little bit, and they were looking at it, but thinking they might.
It's roughly still being finalized, but around 140 units, 150, something like that.
Is that more than we had in our GDP?
They could have gone as low as 90, but I think it's about the PIP number, or the GDP. Sorry.
GDP,
yes.
How many units are in the other one?
96. Yeah.
And I'll be gone on February 10th.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.